Welcome back to the Six Steel City Rings podcast. My name is Ray Whiting. Along with me, I have Miss Leanne Lohman and I have Bob Quinn. Folks, how you all doing?
Good. It was a busy day today and a very slow period of time for football.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is a busy day. And of course, business will pick up, of course, starting with the combine. Um, I know we have a lot to go over this week. Of course, like you said, Leanne, it is kind of slow, but we love talking Steeler football. Guys, today, General Manager Omar Khan had his press conference today, and he addressed a few things. One, uh, the reason for releasing a few players. Two in particular, notable punter Percy Harvin and Senator Mason Cole. Guys, I want you all to jump in again and give me your thoughts on what Omar Khan said today. And like I said, it's a telling sign to me when he released Mason Cole. My thoughts were, okay, the first round pick will be a center, and we look at either JPJ or Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. Share your thoughts.
You want to go first, Bob?
Yeah, as far as the center stuff goes, I thought it was interesting that he, went out of his way to point out that Mason Cole and Mitch Trubisky and Chukwuma Okorafor and Presley Harvin were, solid guys that, stand-up guys, I think is the word he used. You know, they were stand-up guys. They weren't great players, unfortunately. They filled key roles for the Steelers, but Mason Cole was a huge issue. They needed to move on from him. Kind of with Mark Caboli on the timing of it, because they didn't save a ton of money and wait until they either draft or sign a center in free agency. I do think they're probably going to draft one. Jackson Powers Johnson, of course, is a first round projected guy. I know he's good. I know I watch his film and I look at it and I say, wow, what a wonderful player. But Zach Frazier, other than the injury in the second round, or my guy, Cedric Van Pran from Georgia in the third round, is the guy I really like. And I've liked him from the beginning. I've always liked him over Jackson Powers Johnson, who I do admit is a lot better than I thought he was. I thought he was Pac-12 competition. I wasn't really sold on him being dominant in the Pac-12. I mean, I just don't see that as a real
Right.
good football conference.
Right.
But the Senior Bowl really opened my eyes, and a lot of smart draft guys are really putting him very high for a center. So it is for a reason. I just don't think there's a huge difference between him, Frazier, and Van Pran.
Yeah.
I think after those three, it drops off significantly. Bo Zimmer from Arkansas is good, but I don't think he's in their class.
Yeah. I think some of that's going to depend on like where things start to fall as those, it gets closer to the draft and the picks come in. We'll get a chance to look at Zach Frazier and see how he's recovered from that terrible broken leg he had and see how he looks physically in his pro days and things like that to get a feeling. Because I have a hard time imagining the Steelers drafting Powers Johnson with their first round pick. I just think we have so many needs, even though I think he's a generational kind of center that you could bring in. I agree with you. If they think they have a real shot at getting Zach Frazier in the second round, I think that they'll roll the dice to wait on that. And I think as far as Mason Cole goes, I think there's a chance that you could see him back in Pittsburgh. I think that he's going to struggle to have another team pick him up, and the Steelers might be able to go back to him later and offer him a cheaper contract, and if he wants to come back as a backup, it'll be up to him whether he can kind of put his ego aside and not be the starter, but he may need to do something like that to be able to rebuild his reputation, because while he was decent in 22, he was terrible in 2023.
I totally agree.
Well, but by the way, I want to apologize. It made it sound like I said Percy Harvin, because I'm old school, the old receiver that came out of Florida, played for Minnesota.
Right.
Presley Harvin. My correction. Presley Harvin. Sorry. So I thought about the scenario of we release Mason Cole. So we look at, okay, well, maybe we'll pick up a center in the first round. Then I read somewhere about, again, we talk about Chicago and Pittsburgh, Justin Fields. No. That's scratch now. So I guess because now Chicago has 2 first round
Well,
picks.
is it? I mean,
Khan
Leanne, I
didn't
don't know
shut
if
the
you
door
heard what
on
I
it.
heard.
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did an article on it. Khan did not shut the door on him or someone else coming to Pittsburgh.
some say that Justin Fields is going to Atlanta. Now Pittsburgh could wheel and deal and get the 9th pick. And I believe if they do at that point, I believe they will go and get a quarterback. I think it'll
With the
go
ninth,
Glenn.
with the 9th pick.
Yeah.
Who would they get?
Yeah, I don't know that that's high enough to get one of the top 3.
Well, who's the top 3 quarterbacks, in your opinion?
Caleb Williams, Drake May, and
Drake May.
Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty consensus. I personally,
Unless somebody
I don't
falls,
think
like
anybody
somebody
else is
really
a first round
falls.
talent.
Now,
Yeah.
JJ McCarthy is on the radar. He is on the radar now.
But he's not a first rounder.
You know,
I have seen some mocks in where he has slid up, and I've seen
not
him
to
go as high as
9.
the 9th pick. Yeah,
Really?
I saw him go
Wow.
with it. I think it was CBS who mocked him. It's only one of the mock drafts, but I
Yeah.
have seen him sliding into the first round. Personally, I don't see it.
It feels like the same like desperate reach we did for Kenny Pickett. Do you know what I mean? Like to take somebody that really should be a little further back in the draft much sooner, because it fits your need. And so to me, that feels like a little bit of a reach. I mean, we'll see as the combine and the pro days shake out, maybe that'll really boost his draft stock.
But think about this. But think about this. We finished 10-7, made the playoffs. What was the weakest link as far as position wise, both offense and defense? The weakest link was quarterback.
Absolutely.
So, why not fix, or replace that flat tire,
Yeah.
So I believe they may look at a quarterback. Again, Omar Khan, today he was very to the point, and I like him because to me, when Omar speaks, he's more personable. He is more to the point. No disrespect to Kevin Colbert. He's done an excellent job in 20 years as far as draft picks and everything. Some bad, some good. But Kevin Colbert has always been this laid back, conservative type. He reminds me of, sometimes I think he was related to Bill Belichick, but that's another story for another day. But
I mean, as far as I'm sorry, Ray, as far as the quarterback goes, I mean, Omar was pretty specific that they have faith in Kenny, and they don't want to close the door on Mason.
They want
Rudolph.
Mason back. Yeah.
Right. And Leanne, I think you covered that this afternoon.
Yeah. I mean, he really just said just that, which is that they're not closing the door on Mason, that he encourages all players to explore all of their options when that window opens, you know what I mean, which it's too soon for right now. And but they like Mason and Mason likes them, and they're hopeful that they can work out a deal. So it's Steelers are so play their cards so close to the chest, it's hard to tell if that's just like the party line, like that's the nice thing you should say about this guy that's been with your organization, or is that a legitimate thing where, you really want Mason back, so you're giving him a fair offer and all of those things.
When you look at the Steelers, they are 11.4, I believe, million under the cap. Do you give that money to Mason?
Well,
maybe a little bit.
I think with the cap going up, it's more like 30 million. Well,
Yeah.
I think it was 11 and it's gone up to 30 because of the added cap space. Peter King is I mean, it's a good thing he's retiring, and congratulations to him for a great career, but he is emphatically not a fan of bringing Rudolph and Pickett back as the options for the Steelers. I mean, maybe if they were second and third string, he'd go along with it. Do you give Mason a big contract? Well, according to ESPN, Bill Barnwell, he's projecting him as a tier 6 quarterback, which the Athletic ranked him as the 6th best quarterback. So I don't even get where that is coming from. And they're saying that he's going to sign for $2 or $3 million. I mean, if you could get him for that, yeah, sure. But if he's the 6th best quarterback, he's got to have a better market than that, don't you think?
He's the 6th best quarterback. He should be commanding a lot more money. I think now we talked about this like an episode or two ago about Ramon Foster saying that he thinks he's going to get this big payout. And I think if you're at 6th best, then that's where you are. But, you know, it's the thing about Mason that I keep arguing with people is that how do you know if he's really like that quarterback we saw those last 3 games like all the time? Do you know what I mean? Like, is that really like the new Mason Rudolph, or was that, you know, because he just wasn't under any pressure, he had nowhere to go but up, so he can go out there, I'm going to wing the ball all around, and I'm going to have these great games and build some confidence. You know what I mean? So I do think he has some things that he does better than Pickett. I think he reads the field a little better. I think he spreads the ball around a little better, and I think those are assets. But I don't know that I still see him as a QB1. I just don't.
Well, you know,
I can tell you.
Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
What I can tell you, Greg Rosenthal from NFL.com wrote an article, and I think it's a combination of the staff.
Yeah.
It's not just his individual opinion. And they ranked the top 101 free agents, and Mason wasn't in there. There were no Steelers in there, which was not completely surprising with who's in free agency, but I was surprised Mason didn't make the list. I was shocked when I actually started reading the quarterback list. You know, Kirk Cousins, of course, is in the top 5. They had Jacoby Brissett at 30.
Wow.
Right behind Brissett was Baker Mayfield. How in the world do you put Jacoby Brissett over Baker Mayfield? And then Ryan Tannehill's in the top 101. Jameis Winston is in the top 101. Wow. Tyrod Taylor is in the top 101. And I'm sorry, I like Jameis a lot, and I really wish the Steelers would have got him a couple of years ago. And if he suddenly became available, I wouldn't be upset with that either. But Mason Rudolph is better than Tyrod Taylor, and he's better than Jameis at this point based on those 3 games.
Yeah, yes, he is. You know, to give Mason that kind of money, and again, for those 3 games, those last 3 regular season games, is that a good selling point? I mean, you know,
let's go
to notion like Mike Tomlin used to call Mike Wallace a one-trick pony. Is Mason a one-trick pony, you know, for basically saving Tomlin's winning record? It's tough. I mean, it's a tough decision, Bob. I mean, do you give him that money? He's the 6th best as far as backup. 6th.
Well, 6th best free agent quarterback, not best overall in the league.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again,
guys have gotten paid for a lot less. I mean, Matt Flynn from Seattle a couple of years ago or I guess it's almost 10 years ago now, when Russell Wilson was a rookie, he got that huge contract, and Russell Wilson came in and beat him out as a third round draft pick. And then you look at, if you really want to go back, Rob Johnson, who was, you know, had 1 great game for the Jacksonville Jaguars, parlayed that into millions of dollars with the Buffalo Bills, and he lost his job to Doug Flutie. So it's not unprecedented in free agency where they overpay a quarterback off of 1 or 2. Mason,
but it would be in Pittsburgh. Like, that's not our thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would be unprecedented in Pittsburgh.
Which is why I think ultimately he'll sign somewhere else. I don't think anybody's going to bring him in to be a starter. But
no.
But I think if Mason signs elsewhere, you have to draft a quarterback. You got to.
Yeah, they'll draft
You don't
somebody
have to draft
later.
a quarterback in the first 2 rounds, though.
Oh, no,
Right,
no,
later.
no. Um,
And I
but
would virtually guarantee you Arthur Smith is beating the drum behind closed doors that
yes,
Tannehill should be the guy. That maybe not the starter. I think
Right.
he told Mike Tomlin what he wanted to hear. I can make Kenny Pickett good, but I really think he wants Tannehill there as the backup plan.
Yeah.
guys, Omar Khan addressed something today as well about the franchise. And there was an article in the USA Today about uh, the grading of NFL owners, the franchise owners. And team-wise, the Chiefs were ranked dead last. Just above the Chiefs were the Pittsburgh Steelers. Um, they grade each and every area, like the training facility, training staff, nutrition,
Mhm.
and the only category that got the best grade was Mike Tomlin with the A.
Tomlin.
Well, I think they got a good grade in the cafeteria too.
Okay, maybe like a B minus, I believe. But
Yeah.
I've asked, do all of these categories, does it help build a winning franchise? Because if that's the case, and like I said, Pittsburgh was ranked ahead of Kansas City, well, hello, KC, they're back-to-back champions. So, I mean, does that really play a factor in building a winning franchise? And I also have some thoughts about owner Art Rooney, and I am going to share my thoughts on that. But I want you to share your thoughts about that article and what Omar Khan said.
You can go ahead, Leanne.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as far as like helping to build a winning franchise, when I played sports as a kid, we used to say like, if you look good, you play good. You know what I mean? So I think all of those things go into, feeling like you have that winning attitude. And when you look at schools like the University of Alabama and, even Pitt's stuff, you know what I mean, compared to the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers stuff looks like high school level garbage, their locker room. And I mean, I just think that this is a serious football is a serious moneymaker. The NFL is a serious moneymaker. And I know that the Rooneys have a reputation for being a little cheap, but I think, just like in any business, you have to invest back into your business to get return on it. And I think that it's really caught up to them in not being, cute or ironic anymore. And now everything just looks dated and now these reports are coming out, and I think it reflects badly on ownership. I just think it does. I think they need to, to do something to make, players' families feel more comfortable when they're there, to improve the condition of the locker rooms and things like that for the players. I know the players said that they don't care, but come on.
Yeah. I mean, Mark Caboli was on with Joe Starkey yesterday, right after this came out, and he brought up some interesting points as far as the stadium. It was always kind of a bad plan to put the Pitt Panthers and the Steelers in the same facility and basically split it down the middle. So his point was you can't upgrade what's not upgradable. You can't make a better locker room because there's no room to make a better
Right.
locker room. I don't know how true that is. I mean, there's all kinds of, new age designs you could maybe do with the space you have, just rip everything out and start over.
It's not like
I mean,
what they have is top notch though. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like it's just a little small, but it's all state of the art. It's neither.
Exactly.
It's a nice locker room. I've been in it before. It's nice. Yeah.
Well, Caboli pointed out, and this is true, it's not as nice as Georgia, Alabama,
No, Alabama's is
or
incredible.
any of the major Division I programs. So from an NFL perspective, are there teams that spend a lot more money in newer facilities? I'm sure the Chargers have the greatest locker room in the league out there in that stadium, but how much does that help you or hurt you? And I also think, and I wrote the article about this yesterday, I kind of think guys like Broderick Jones and George Pickens under anonymity, Najee Harris, hey, what stuff in college was way better than this. What am I doing in this locker room? But like to Leanne's point, now all of a sudden today, all of the players for the Steelers said, well, that wasn't
Right.
me grading us bad. Well, who
Right.
did?
Right.
You know, so you say, okay, comparing to the University of Georgia and the University of Alabama, and by the way, Clemson has a pretty nice locker room.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah, that's another
Yeah.
one. You can probably name 20 Division I
Yeah.
programs.
LSU.
Right.
I mean, tons of them.
Yeah,
Oregon.
Clemson's
Yeah.
was $28 million renovation there.
Yeah.
And of course, Phil Knight with Nike and Oregon, you know, they no telling what theirs cost. But we got to push the issue here. So if Art Rooney was to go as far as rebuild a new locker room, renovate the locker room, why not ask for a new stadium?
Well, they're under lease till 2030.
Yeah.
So,
and this, you know, it's coming. You know, it's coming.
oh yeah, it's not. It's only 6 years away.
Yeah.
So, and to get it on the ballot, get approved, all that good stuff. You know, yeah, it's
Takes
going to take a
time.
couple of years, and it's probably coming. But then the question becomes, and this is where I would quibble with Art Rooney. They are going. Last time they built the stadium, it was very much about the ballot initiative and the city's contribution to the process. The Steelers are back then were worth, you know, close to $1 billion. I think the valuation on the team now is at $4.63 billion.
Yes.
On the most recent valuation. Rooney's bought Art Senior bought it for $2,500 in 1933. Yeah. They could easily identify a plot of land, which is again a problem with when they bought the stadium and why it's so hard to do anything to it. They could go find a plot of land and just buy it and build it, and you know and just say, hey, we're just going to keep all the money and we own it, city. You can't use it unless you pay us. It's not always popular to do it that way. I mean, NFL owners don't, you know, they made their money for a reason. But, you know, at this point, being a private, you know, if you want to host Super Bowls, if you want to host the draft, if you want to have all these events, go build a private stadium. I mean, I'm sure they would make their money back. And if not, okay, so instead of being worth $4.63 billion, you're worth 3.5 when you spend $800 million on a new stadium.
Bob, Leanne, but you know what the going rate is. The owners, yeah, they want a new stadium. They want taxpayer dollars to pay for it, you know. And I'm telling you right now, like my hometown, my Wizards. So Ted Leonsis wants the city to pay, you know, good chunk of the new stadium. And we're talking like $1 billion, around $1 billion, and I think he wants the city to pay like 75% of it. And the mayor, Mary Bowser, said, you know, we can give you half, meet you halfway. I guess that's not good enough. Look at the Buffalo Bills owner. He wants taxpayers' dollars to pay for it. Now, and let's really break it down here, because when you look at Acrisure Field, you know, and seats and everything, you know, you got to pay a licensing fee. Then you got to buy season tickets. You know, and a part of that goes to, and who's another player in this? The Allegheny County Sports Authority. They are a factor in this as well. So the dollar, you know, is going from this hand to this hand to this hand. Of course, you know, everybody's getting paid. And when I look at the grand scheme of things, guys, Art Rooney, and I ask myself, are you being another Bob Nutter in the Pirates?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About some things he definitely
I'm sorry.
is.
I had to say it, but it's within in respect. Are you being another Bob Nutter?
He's not as bad as nutting, but he definitely has his things that I feel like he's that way about. You know what I mean? And I think that the era that the team was built, you know, post depression and all of these things, I think lends itself to, you know what I mean, this kind of like cheap mindset to things. And I think that that became like a tradition in Pittsburgh, where you have other teams doing all of these really extravagant, crazy things. And I don't think the Steelers need to go that far, but I do think it's important for the owner to show that, you know, hey, I hear what players are saying. I hear what families are saying. I hear what fans are saying. And we're not going to go to the Los Angeles extreme, but we're going to meet somewhere in the middle and fix some of these problems.
Yeah, I agree
I
because
think
go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think when you look back, like the Chief owned those teams for all those years, and
Yeah.
you know, they were terrible for 39 years. Everybody
Oh yeah.
sort of forgets that, but they were really bad before the Immaculate Reception.
Yes.
Post the Immaculate Reception, a lot of the stuff that the Chief did that wasn't, you know, firing coaches, bringing back coaches, you know, running through quarterbacks like they were nothing, you know, all that kind of got forgiven and glossed
Yes.
over. Now, Dan Rooney is, for my money, was the best owner in NFL history. He came up, kind of became the team president, general manager, was really involved with Bill Nunn and Chuck Nolan building those teams. Dick Haley too, would be remiss not to mention him. Those guys operated a different way. And then Dan Rooney, it wasn't that he was cheap. He had his way of doing business. And
Yeah.
I remember that Bill Cowher really wanted him to re-sign Merrill Hodge when he first took over, and thought he would go in and swagger in and tell Dan Rooney, hey, we're going to sign Merrill Hodge and you're going to figure it out. Rooney shut the door behind him, sat him down, and said, you don't ever tell me how to spend my money.
Right.
And Cowher never did again. He said he wasn't mean about it, wasn't harsh, but no uncertain terms. I'm the boss. I decide. You're the coach. You coach. Go back out and talk to the players. So Art Rooney doesn't have that touch. He's never had that
Yeah.
touch. I know there's a lot of love for Dan. There's a lot of love for the Chief, but there's not a ton of love for Art Rooney II. Now, he's older now than when Dan Rooney turned the team over to him back in 2000, in the early 2000s. So Daniel Rooney, he's a young guy. That maybe it's time for him to take over. Maybe he has that touch that Art doesn't.
Yeah.
Maybe Art's hanging on like Jerry Jones looking for a Super Bowl, or playing GM behind the scenes because nobody talks about what goes on.
Like, oh my goodness, it's in your family. Who doesn't matter who's in charge, as long as it's a Rooney, the whole family wins. Like, let's get somebody new and innovative in here. I hoped that as he was with the team for a while and he got older, that he would get a little bit more, I don't even know what the word is, personable or something. Do you know what I mean? As to where it felt like he had that same investment that Dan did, and he just doesn't. Feels different.
Well, I think he's interested in how the team does, and but I think he's interested in being an executive.
Yes.
Whereas Dan, and especially the Chief, were interested in coming by the lockers, talking to players, being out on the practice field. That's not his.
Well, you
style.
hear those stories, you know what I mean, about the players and their relationships, you know, with the Chief and Dan. And I mean, that is not something that you hear about anymore. Do you know what I mean? Is you don't hear those stories anymore.
It's business from now on. It's a straight business. You know, I remember the days when it comes to training camp, Latrobe, you know, don't come in with your fancy rides and stuff like that. I mean, you know, pickup trucks and old beat down, broken up cars and everything, old Cutlass. Because I remember
Did anybody tell AB about that? Because didn't he come in a helicopter one year?
In a helicopter.
He didn't get that memo. I'm sorry. AB didn't get that memo. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, decisions have to be made with Art Rooney, how he's going to fix this. And again, maybe
I don't think he is.
Huh?
I don't either. I don't think he'll do anything.
I don't think he cares based on what Brooke Pryor reported. I mean, I take that back. he cares that people think he's 31st, but as long as the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs owner is sitting right below him, he's
Yeah.
probably not overly concerned about it.
But he
Yeah.
has to be. But he has to be for the simple fact that, wait a minute, if I am Art Rooney, and behind me, I'm next to last, and behind me are the two-time defending champions, maybe I need to do something, you know. And is this a reflection on Mike Tomlin?
Well, are you saying he needs to get worse? Because if
I
he
was gonna
drops
say,
one
is that
spot,
what's
will we get 3 Super Bowls in
I'm not
5
saying
years?
that, you know. But I mean,
That's what he's trying to do, get us to that spot so we'll win the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
yeah, well, you know, again, I already have some decisions to make, and again, you can't keep on holding on to the past. I mean, just you
Yeah.
do have to upgrade, you know. And again, I was there at the last home game at Three Rivers when they beat the Redskins, then
I
Redskins,
was too. I was too.
24-3. And
Yep.
yeah, some of the fixtures and stuff in there, and then that stadium was like, whoa. I mean, really outdated. But like I said, time will tell, and we shall see how they make of this.
Well, you look at Three Rivers is actually a good example of kind of what Heinz Field,
Yeah.
well, Acrisure is going through.
Mhm.
You know, it was built in
Yeah.
their early 70s, and you know, it lasted about 30 years. And
Yeah.
that's when, you know, Riverfront and all those big cookie cutter stadiums, and they all kind of went away. You know, PNC Park is beautiful.
Mhm.
So it's not like they, you know, they don't have it in them to build a stadium. They just, I mean, to me, they made a poor choice of where they put it. And then second of all, you know, it's 30 years. It's time to build something new, or, you know, Jacksonville did this, and it made a world of difference when they just, instead of building a new stadium, which was a real consideration for a long time, they just decided, you know what, we're going to spend a couple $100 million on the Gator Bowl, and whatever they call the stadium from year to year, it's had 100
Right.
names. And they put the pools in, they upgraded the club seats, they
Mhm.
tarped the top of the stadium. It's a great place to watch a football game now. So
Yeah.
the Steelers don't necessarily have to, you know, build a new stadium, but they do have to renovate, and they have to kick Pitt out.
Yeah.
Because the only way they're going to fix that whole locker room practice facility thing is to get rid of the Pitt Panther side and just renovate the whole thing.
The whole thing for the Steelers.
You
It's
know,
a terrible idea anyways. I know that, like, in theory it sounds good, it feels cute. Do you know what I mean? To have it play their games there, but it's a mess. I mean, it tears the field up. They don't have enough space in the facility. To me, there's always conflicts. I just think it's time to cut that cord.
you know,
You know, Leanne, a good question. If Pitt doesn't share the facility with the Steelers, do they draft Kenny Pickett?
No.
I agree. I agree. Uh, but what, I mean, what do you suggest? They build a stadium.
I like the
I
idea
mean,
of renovating what we have personally.
yeah.
And kicking Pitt out. Like, I like that. I think if we got rid of Pitt and we renovated what we had, I like that I like that the stadium is right there in the city. Like, especially for somebody who doesn't live in Pittsburgh right now. Do you know what I mean? I like going and being in the city and being able to walk around and go to the games. I mean, yeah, I spent a lot of years living in Washington, and there's nothing like having to drive to a whole nother state to go see your team play because they're no longer in DC. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The old RFK Stadium was a great location. And, you know, now they're so far away. Traffic getting out there is a mess. There's no public transportation if you wanted to take the metro. I mean, it's, you know, it's just not ideal. So I like the location in the city. So because I think that kind of space is at a premium, maybe a renovation is the way to go.
That sounds good to me. I probably, yeah, I like that. Guys, you know, the NFL Combine is here. And again, Omar Khan here addressed some issues about the combine. Day one will be the defensive linemen and the linebackers. And which is
I
something
think it's still
Pittsburgh.
going on, but yeah,
It is, yeah.
they're working out today.
So,
Mhm.
so the thing is, they are, on the defensive side, this is something that Steelers pride themselves on, defense first. Um, any names mentioned so far? Anyone that stood out by far so far? Or what are your thoughts? Who do you like as far as defensive linemen? I know I'm catching you off guard. Who do
Yeah.
you like as far as defensive linemen? What about the linebacker position?
How about Chop Robinson running that incredible 40? Like that was unbelievable how fast he was. I was shocked. I forget what the exact time was now, but it was like a 4.5, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah, very
it was
fast.
shocking how fast it was.
Yes. Very impressive.
But a couple of guys to from the defensive line and then a linebacker, because I do think that linebacker is going to be very important in the second round. And I'm really encouraged by the visit with Jeremiah Trotter and that getting out there as they could potentially go for him in the second round. A lot of mocks have put him in the third, but you've got the pedigree with his dad was an all-pro and a pro bowler. There's just something about it, kind of like what with Joey Porter last year, or Joey Porter Jr., I should say. There's something about that legacy player. You know, Porter didn't play the same position as his dad, but Trotter does. And he's fast, he's physical, and he's a really good option in the second round. I don't think there's no inside linebacker who should probably go in the first round. Maybe the kid from North Carolina State, Peyton Wilson. He's got some pop to him. I don't think he'd be there, by the time the Steelers pick in the second round. The guy who I do think it would be there in the second round before the interest with Trotter is Junior Colson from Michigan.
Yeah.
He has got a lot of pop. He's a hitter. And he's good in coverage. He's not, you would think being a bigger guy, he wouldn't be as good in coverage. He's 250, 6'3". He's about 15 pounds heavier than Trotter, but can move with him. Another guy I really like in the linebacker who I think they could get late in the draft is Tyron Hopper from Missouri. It's two-time second team All SEC, highly productive player, was very consistent all of his time at Missouri. And he'll be a late round pick. I mean, I haven't seen what his time was in the 40. I don't even know if he's ran it yet. He could lift a little bit, maybe into the 5th round, but I don't see him going much higher than that. As far as defensive line goes, I love Jerzon Newton. He is a guy who, if Nate Wiggins wasn't there at 20 or Amarius Mims, I might even take Jerzon Newton over Amarius Mims. I think he's the best defensive lineman in the draft. Day 2, T'Vondre Sweat. There's reports that he's going to weigh in at 380. I haven't seen it yet. But if you watch him at Texas, if he's really 380 pounds and moves like that, that's a no-brainer in the 2nd or 3rd round for the Steelers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a ridiculously big man.
He was listed as 366. T'Vondre Sweat out of Texas. To me, he reminds me of Big Snack.
Right. I think this sounds like the linebacker position, I think is definitely has got a, has been a priority for the Steelers, obviously, but kind of becomes even more of one now with the news that we don't know what's going on with Cole Holcomb. I mean, at least that's what it sounded like to me from Khan today. Do you know what I mean? Is they're not sure that he's even going to be at 100%.
Yeah. And honestly, if Landon Roberts is your number 1 going into the season, that's probably not good enough. Last year, he was the number 3, and he was great. Great number 3.
Great number 3.
A decent number 2. Yeah. But if he's number 1, I think you almost have to go get somebody in free agency if you're not going to draft a linebacker.
Something. Yeah. If Holcomb's not going to be back and healthy, then I agree. I think you got to go after somebody in free agency and still draft somebody. I think you've got to put some talent in that position. It's been a gaping hole for, well, since Shazier.
I can
Yeah.
see drafting, I'm trying not drafting, but picking up a free agent in the linebacker position simply because to me, the oldest on the defensive side is Cam Hayward. And now I believe his play count is being diminished. So, you got to replace with youth at the line. So why not have an inside linebacker, a free agent, to help solidify that secondary right there, that the middle area. So, but to draft a rookie, and put him back there, I think that's a little bit risky, being he's not experienced. So I mean, again, I like that idea of drafting. I keep saying drafting. I'm sorry, signing a free agent linebacker to replace Cole Holcomb. Like I said, Cole's pretty nice. I hope he gets himself together. But at the same time, when I think about drafting a linebacker, remember Malcolm Spence? He tore his knee up it was the last preseason game, and Pittsburgh kept him on the IR for the next 2 years, being patient, thinking, okay, he is a stud, he's gonna get him back together. Once he's fully healed, he may have lasted probably one season and they cut him. I don't want to see that again. And patience right now, I believe is not on the Steelers side, given the fact that TJ Watt is getting up in age now, but he still produced. Cam, I think he's 36, and he's not going anywhere. He want to retire as a Steeler. I like that. So we're getting younger, but time right now is not on the Steelers side, especially on the defensive side.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I would say about, Cam is going to be 35. Ogunjobi's going to be 30. They have to get younger on the defensive line. Loudermilk, Kevin Colbert sold him as some great Wisconsin, slipped to the 5th round, shouldn't have been. He's a nice backup. Keanu Benton looks like the real deal. The good news is Omar Khan is picking players, not Kevin Colbert, who created tons of holes over the last 7 years. The first half of Colbert's career, he's a Hall of Famer. The second half of his career probably should have been fired. It's really, really, really bad in the roster. As far as when you look into the depth positions and the draft classes, the 2021 class now, you're probably going to retain Najee, maybe, and a 5th-year option. You may sign Pat Freiermuth, but the rest of the class is gone, except for Loudermilk, who they probably will sign for a low-cost free agent. So, yay, we'll get to keep Isaiah Loudermilk, which wasn't the intention when they drafted those guys.
Right.
In 2022, the draft class is half gone already. So, Khan doesn't look to have that problem. Looks like at least 6, and hopefully Corey Trice, knock on wood, is healthy, and if he contributes anything like the other 6, then great. They're back to having great drafts. Bringing in a free agent linebacker in Pittsburgh, they've been putting Band-Aids on it now since Shazier. Miles Jack was.
That's what I was saying. I don't want to do that anymore. If you had to bring somebody in as depth, I think that's fine. Obviously, depending on what happens with Holcomb, but I think they need to go out and get a stud at linebacker in the draft. I think we can't afford to continue sort of like we're doing with center. I think they've got to prioritize those positions, and you can't continue to look at these half-ass old men from other teams that may or may not be able to keep up, because we're just getting gashed. Other teams know it and they just pick us apart. And TJ Watt can't do everything.
And the last time we went as far as trade, to trade up, we got that linebacker out of Michigan who, Yeah.
I still
I
think
mean,
Bush was all his injury. I think that was the injury. I think he would have been okay if he hadn't gotten hurt. I think it messed with his head.
He's to me, he was a smaller version of Jabril Peppers.
Yeah.
Good, I mean, excellent coverage guy. I mean, he from side to side, he got it. I mean, I think he has the potential of replacing Shazier, but that injury, you know, it's 90%
and
movement.
I think that's the problem right there is Ryan Shazier was a unique talent, and the Steelers have
Yes.
been chasing replacing him for years.
It's a
You're
really good
not
point.
gonna replace him. He was a unicorn. He was like Palomalu. He had ridiculous speed at linebacker. He freelanced a lot. He played it, and he could get away with it. You're not going to find that guy in the draft. There hasn't been a guy like him since that I can think of anywhere in the NFL who plays inside linebacker. You know, so you gotta go with a more traditional, inside linebacker kind of guy. Like when Vince Williams was paired with Shazier. Vince Williams was the hitter, and Shazier played coverage and chased all over the field. Well, they brought in a couple guys who were supposed to be thumpers or kind of thumpers. Miles Jack, before his knee injuries, and he was past his prime, even though he's not that old when he got to Pittsburgh. But I can tell you in Jacksonville, Miles Jack was a fly around, super fast linebacker, great coverage guy, but he just wasn't with the Steelers. So I know they've been linked a little bit to Frankie Lavu from Carolina. I hope I'm saying his name right. The guy I love, though, and he's cheap. Well, I think he'll be cheap, is Al Shayer from the Titans. He was the backup to Warner in San Francisco. He played in the Super Bowl. He's just a hitter all over the place line, and he was supposed to go to Tennessee and kind of be the guy, but he was really good in Tennessee, but he didn't take the leap into Pro Bowl type stuff. So maybe he's still young enough. He flies around backing up Fred Warner. Maybe we could stick him in the middle of the defense cheaply next to a bona fide rookie. I mean, Jack Campbell last year for the Lions, he made a huge impact on their defense. I think you can take an inside linebacker as a rookie, and Dick LeBeau ain't coaching the defense anymore. The defense isn't that complicated. It used to be a lot more complicated. They don't play all the exotic zone blitz schemes with the middle linebackers anymore. You can put a rookie in the middle of the defense. Worked for Kendrell Bell.
But you also have the option, though, if you do put somebody like that in there as a veteran and then draft a rookie, to give him like the JPJ treatment and have him come in some slowly like we did with Porter this year. Do you know what I mean? And then as you realize whether he's got the confidence and the talent to be able to start a little more, play a little more, you keep giving him more and more responsibility like they did with Porter. I thought that was a smart way to do it rather than just throwing him in as a rookie. I think he needed to be made to wait a little bit and be patient. A kid like him, he's always the best. And the NFL is a different animal. So I thought it was good for him to have to be a little bit patient and hungry and want this. And I think that, if they could find somebody an inside linebacker in the draft, I think they could do something similar with them.
Yeah, looking at that inside linebacker position again, Leanne, another unicorn, but he's used, was James Ferrier. Pretty effective. And again, I miss him wholeheartedly. And I sometimes question myself, who's a better inside linebacker, Ferrier or Shazier? We know Shazier had the speed. And I believe sometimes the way Shazier plays, it was kind of reckless. At the same time, Ferrier was more smart. He knew how to cover the linebackers coming out the backfield. So that right there to me speaks volume. And again, like I said, but we need. I think we need more experience than rookie because I know that the safety out of Georgia, I think it's Juwan Ballard. He was spoken about pretty highly, how he could play alongside Minka Fitzpatrick. Let Minka roam roam the secondary while Ballard will anchor that defense back there.
When you talk about a guy like Bullard at safety, I mean, there are good options on the roster already for that. They're not true strong safeties, and neither is Bullard.
Right.
I would rather get a top tier corner and a top tier linebacker to put in the defense versus a strong safety who, frankly, there's doubts about. I mean, I like a strong safety who's a hitter. Bullard is not that. And you need a hitter next to, because one of the problems with Minka this year was he was sneaking up way too much into run defense.
Yeah.
Out of necessity, he was a leading tackler for a little while, and he was probably their best run stopper, which is, if my free safety is my best run
Disturbing.
stopper, I got a
That's
problem on
disturbing.
in my run defense.
Yeah, something's wrong.
So I would I would love them. The second corner is a priority. I mean, they may not pick that in the first round. They may get L'Jarius Sneed or, Jalen Johnson in free agency if they really go big and spend a bunch of money. But they've got to get a second corner to pair with Porter, because Levi Wallace is a free agent. He may come back on a team-friendly deal. But if he's the second corner, we got a real problem.
Yeah, we got to have somebody else.
Yeah. And inside linebackers, of the defenses in the past, if you think about really the best inside linebackers that the Steelers have had over the last 20 years, Kendrell Bell, without a doubt, started as a rookie, unfortunately, terrible injury, but he was a ridiculous force for the 2 years he was healthy at the beginning of his career. Shazier, ridiculous speed, everything else. Ferrier was a free agent. I wouldn't call Ferrier a unicorn. He's an all-pro, solid, great player, but not a unicorn. I mean, you could duplicate James Ferrier's, talent. You couldn't necessarily duplicate what he was to the middle of the defense and how he called the defense and kept guys in position. But there's nothing insanely unique like Shazier's speed or Bell's just sheer dominance.
Ferrier was exactly what they needed at that time. Like, he fit the need. They had a very specific need, and he fit into that slot like a puzzle piece. Do you know what I mean? And it makes me wonder if at the end of Colbert's career, that's part of what he was not doing really well. He was looking at, we need this player, and we'll find somebody that's relatively inexpensive and bring them over, but they don't necessarily plug in for the needs we have. And so things, to me, like, especially on the offensive line, things look choppy. Do you know what I mean? And not cohesive. And, those guys didn't work well. I think that's part of what Khan started to change last year, like bringing in Isaac Seumalo and drafting Broderick Jones, was working to build this group of guys that strengths band together, sort of like the offensive line back in, with during the Killer Bee days. Do you know what I mean? Something more like that. And that, I think, is the problem with some of the defense too. I think, we've plugged in people, Patrick Peterson and some other people, I think, and that hasn't necessarily covered the weak area that we had. And so it's not helping.
Yeah, and the Steelers were insanely thin at corner. I mean, we went in, they drafted Joey Porter, so that it was supposed to be Pat Pete and Levi Wallace as the 1-2. Maybe Porter is the nickel, maybe James Pierre, maybe Shandon Sullivan, but it was to ease him along slowly. And, frankly, I'm really surprised they didn't identify this in training camp. It's nice that Porter sat, but he probably shouldn't have. He was their best corner. He was their best corner in training camp. That's why I always question, Terrell Austin, Mike Tomlin, there's these great defensive minds. You're watching these practices and you can't tell that the kid is your best corner. I mean, it's tough on a rookie to throw him out there. He probably would have gotten burned in the first few games. But if he's the guy, if he's that dude, he'll come back from that. Unless you're Sauce Gardner, you're going to get burned. Mike Taylor got burned like crazy and became the, as far as I'm concerned, best cover corner in the league. Just had terrible hands.
Until that playoff game against Denver, and he got burned, about Demaryius Thomas, but that's another story. I still,
All pro and a Pro Bowler. You know, I still hate it. It's a painful memory, but
Yeah.
I don't blame Mike for that one. What you're doing, playing 10 men in the box, you know, maybe drop a safety back just in case.
you know, we switching gears here. So we talk about the draft. You know, we talk about who we think they should draft. Got a little debate here. We're gonna do a little role play. You two. Here's the debate. In your opinion, what's best? Do you draft the best available player, or do you draft according to the team needs?
Best available player, I think, and I think the Steelers have done it. You know, obviously, no GM is perfect, no system is perfect, but I think in large part the Steelers have done that really well over the years. And I say that to say, of course, within reason. Do you know what I mean? During the Ben Roethlisberger years, if there'd been a good quarterback there in the first round, we weren't going to go take them just because he might have been the highest ranked player at that time. So you got to stick within your framework of what you need. But I think it's served really well for us to be able to be open-minded and not narrow on to, you know, we're only looking at cornerbacks right now and, you know, who's the best cornerback, and then you miss somebody generational that was sitting there.
Yeah, I see the best player available, but it's definitely like Leanne said, it's got to be within the framework. This is a really good draft for edge rushers. The last thing the Steelers need is an edge rusher. You got TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Herbig looks like he's going to be fantastic as the third rotational guy. So when you're looking at it, you know, I think Khan's plan last year when he drafted Broderick Jones and signed Isaac Seumalo, and unfortunately Tomlin and Matt Canada, whoever was responsible, didn't follow through on it, was I just fixed the left side of the line.
Right.
I got you a rookie left tackle who looks like he's a stud, and I got you one of the top 10 right or left guards in the league with Seumalo. Well, in all their wisdom, Canada and Tomlin decided, well, instead of playing Broderick Jones next to Isaac Seumalo, we'll keep him on the bench half the season, and then when we do put him in, we're going to put him next to James Daniels on the right side, which he hasn't played since his freshman year in college.
Yeah.
Luckily, Jones was a good enough athlete to adapt to it. So this year, you know, they still have holes, but the holes are actually on the right side of the line now in the defensive line. So, yeah, I love Michael Thomas from LSU. He's a great wide. I think he's going to be a great wide receiver. It's a deep wide receiver class. But you have to, you know, you need help in the line. You need a linebacker. You need a corner. So I don't care how good some of these guys are. You got to be smart about it. You need a center.
Yeah.
And okay, you know, yes, if you draft, which if they end up picking Powers Johnson, you're not going to hate the pick. I mean, if the guy's truly a generational all pro for 10 years talent, then that's great. But at the same time, if you could have got a Pro Bowl talent in the third round and added a generational corner and a generational tackle, well, now all of a sudden I'm drafting for need over position. I'm analyzing that, hey, I think I can get really good value in the lower rounds at different positions. So,
and of course, I think what's hard is that
it.
we always look at the draft in hindsight. Do you know what I mean? So it's easy to sit here in hindsight and say, well, we drafted so and so, and there was someone almost as good 2 rounds later. You know, when you're sitting there in the moment, of course, you don't know that that guy could turn out to be almost as good. You know, I mean, there's lots of players that wind up getting taken late in the draft that perform far better than, you know, Tom Brady was always the top example of guys that are drafted late that you know, outperform where they are, Antonio Brown. And so I think that, you know, I think you have to go into it with a reasonable mindset, you know what I mean? And not be so narrow focused. I think some teams get so narrow focused on our top need that, you know, everything else around them gets blocked out and they miss, you know, really great players. The Washington Commanders are notorious for that.
You know, go back to 2012. I remember draft night. It was first round. and I have my hat on, I'm sitting in front of TV, here comes Pittsburgh with their pick in the 2012 draft. And I'm thinking, they're going to get Dante Hightower out of Alabama. They're going to get him because he's a high linebacker. They're going to get him. They're going to get him. The Castro. I threw my hat at the TV. I was cussing like a sailor. I said, I cannot believe they did this.
And if you'd only known then what you know now.
Right, but see, I mean, yeah, they obviously saw something in him, but that's not to say that, I mean, obviously we've had our draft picks that are bust, I mean, so I think it happens to every team at some point. You can do the best you can with the information you have at the time, but
The
we have a
story
lot of
is
needs
that
this year.
the story is that Tomlin and Colbert were insisted they wanted Hightower. You know
Yeah,
who's responsible for David De Castro? Our old friend Art Rooney. He overruled
Yeah,
them.
Rooney.
He said, I want De Castro. And he was the anchor of the line. I mean, honestly, it was really bad luck for Ben in 21 because I think it would have made a huge difference. But really for the Steelers in general, De Castro should still be playing. I mean, unfortunately, injuries, I mean, it really just ended his career
Yeah.
prematurely.
Took a
This
toll.
is all pro, probably cost him the Hall of Fame too, because
Yeah.
he was on that track, all pro Pro Bowler, all pro Bowler. It was just pencil it in. Hey, here's our guard, and he's our best lineman. You know, Hightower was a good player,
Yeah.
but in the middle of the decade, and this is kind of the Castro, but then it just steadily went downhill. And I think the Steelers were really drafting for need. They needed a linebacker. They wanted a linebacker. The best linebacker we can get, Hightower, who was a decent player. We need a corner. We got to have a corner. The best corner we can get is Artie Burns. Okay, well, Jarvis Jones.
Artie third-degree burns. Yeah.
Yeah. Jarvis Jones. I mean, and in fairness to Jones, Steelers should have never picked him. And
No.
not because he wasn't a great college player. He was so damaged goods with his back. Everybody in the draft knew it. That
We knew it.
Yeah, if we take a risk on this guy, why are we taking a risk in the first round? He's at best going to play 4 or 5 years because of the condition of his back.
And not take risks in the first
going back to
round.
this earlier, going back to this, Spence, the middle linebacker, it wasn't a bigger risk than Jarvis Jones. I think it was a more,
They didn't get
it was a
Spence
more
in the
solid,
first round.
it was a more solid pick with Malcolm Spence. It's unfortunate that he blew his knee out, and but they wasted years on him, and actually he didn't pan out. Guys, I know we're coming near the end of the episode here, but again, we're still going strong. I mean, this is good talk here. We mentioned the word bust because again, when we mention combine, we think of draft picks and we say bust. Hypothetical question here. 7th round draft picks. Where does the bust status come in? Is it the first top 3 picks? If they don't pan out, is a bust, or say 4 through 7, if they don't pan out, it's just you become a journeyman or you just a practice player. What do you think?
I think it's hard to classify anything outside of the second round as a bust, and even the second round is kind of iffy. I mean, generally, when you think draft bust, you think first round guys, Jamarcus Russell, Devin Bush, Lee Burns, Jarvis Jones. Jesus, a lot of Steelers. Those are the kind of guys I think that, can you waste a pick in the 3rd or 4th round? Yeah. I mean, if you pick a punter in the 4th round, that's a wasted pick, in my opinion. But can you do things a little bit differently? Absolutely. But, for me, if it's outside of the 1st round, it's hard to call a guy a bust, especially if he started for you for a couple of years.
Yeah. I agree that I feel the same way. I was going to say, maybe like you said, maybe the 2nd round, I think that's iffy depending on how high in the 2nd round they are. Do you know what I mean? But I think the bust to me definitely embodies that first round guy you expected to be a starter like day one or nearly day one, and then he doesn't produce at the level that he was expected to. So, it's a complete waste of a first round pick. And that to me is where your bust comes in. I think late round guys, 5, 6, 7. I mean, I think your expectations there are more hope than, expected play. I think you hope you get something, you find a diamond in the rough there and get something great, somebody serviceable, but you're looking at depth pieces, practice squad most of the time at that point. I think it's hard for somebody that's going to be on your practice squad to be
Special
considered a
teams, yeah.
bust. Special teams, yeah. I think it's hard for those guys to be called a bust.
All right. Well, guys, that about it. I can't talk right now. I'm sorry. That about does it for this week.
Don't
Please
forget,
like, subscribe, and share the episode. Yep. Please.
Like, subscribe, share. Also, Bob, you forgot one more thing.
What's that?
What's our email address?
Our what?
Our email address. If you want email,
sixsteelrings@gmail.com.
Oh, nice. 6steelrings@gmail.com.
Yeah. So if you have any questions or anything, hey, shoot them our way. We will be more than happy to discuss it and share your email with us. And again, we look forward to feedback.
Yep.
Well, guys, again, I want to thank you all, Leanne, Bob.
Thank you, Ray.
Until then,
Thanks, Ray.
Next week, more Steel Talk. Y'all take care.
You too.